Man, it's so good to have the family back together. It makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. Holidays were just never the same when you kids were fighting.
Man, this felt like a throwback episode of Invincible in all the best ways possible. Welcome back, everybody. This is my breakdown of Invincible Season 4, Episode 3. We get the return of some villains that we first met back in Season 1, and we see that Mark continues to struggle on what to do when it comes to deciding the fate of his enemies. Speaking of Mark, him and Eve are about to have their world turned upside down. There's a lot to cover in this breakdown, so let's get into it all. Full spoilers ahead. We open with the return of some familiar characters, Machine Head, who's meeting with Titan. Now, we know that Mr. Liu was resurrected in one of the post-credit scenes last season, but Titan's now finding out the news that he's back and he's wanting some revenge. Machine Head wants to pool resources and have Titan rejoin the Order. Despite their complex history, he knows that the old school villains need to stick together to survive. But as Titan normally does, he isn't interested in the merger, as he tells Machine Head that he'll take his chances on his own. Meanwhile, at the GDA, Cecil and Donald are rewatching the footage that's been bothering Cecil, which is Mark killing the human host of the Sedgwicks. Cecil isn't just looking at a tactical decision, he's seeing a pattern. He tells Donald that Mark's recent absolute solutions, where he chooses the lethal option, aren't just warning signs. To Cecil, they are a roadmap to a disaster. He sees a kid on the verge of fully losing his shit, and we know when Cecil gets worried, he starts making contingency plans. But Donald, normally the voice of reason most of the times, he defends Mark, arguing that Mark wasn't being malicious, he was just doing what he thought was the right in a split decision, high stakes moment. It's a classic debate that we've seen in these type of stories before, but it does relate to what's going on, and that being, does the ends justify the means? Now, Cecil doesn't care about the why, he only cares about the what if. Speaking of Cecil's contingency plans, we get a brief look at D.A. Sinclair. He's working overtime as he continues to perfect the reanimate. It's a reminder that while Cecil judged Mark for his morality, the GDA continues building its own army of monsters in their basement, but they've convinced themselves it's for the greater good. Now, back at the Guardians HQ, the team is split over Mark's decision as Brick confronts Rex about his lack of discipline in the field. Brick gives Rex an ultimatum. Either he fall in line and follow orders, or he'll just get kicked out of the team. Now, Rex surprisingly doesn't explode. Get it? Yeah, it's a terrible joke. But we see that he does agree to fall in line. Rex hits the showers, but he starts coughing and he suddenly coughs up a squidward that comes flying out of his mouth. Now, without his armor and his voice temporarily gone from the coughing fit, Rex is defenseless. The squid launches itself at Rex, and for a second it looks like all hope is lost for him, but we see Monster Girl comes in, crushing the parasite before it can reattach to him. Rex admits they've been lucky so far, but their enemies keep coming back stronger. As Monster Girl sits next to him, these words that she speaks kind of permeates throughout this episode. Maybe Mark was right. If you kill them, they don't come back. They don't hide in your lungs or cause more chaos. It's a small shift in the team's perspective about what they should do with their enemies moving forward. Do you rely on luck, or do you make your own choices? Now, over at the Grayson's household, Mark is still spiraling as he's replaying the Squid Wish death over and over in his head. You can see the physical toll that the stress is having on Mark as he tries to reach out to the one person who might understand, that being Eve, but he gets no answer because she's having her own issues to deal with. He leaves her a voicemail, just needing to hear her voice, but before he can even process his own thoughts, Donald shows up as Cecil wants to talk to him. Meanwhile, we find Eve in an open field trying to figure out why her powers aren't working. Now, one thing that is working is the relationship between Debbie and Paul. Paul shows her a house that he wants to buy together and live with the boys. He believes it's a great fresh start, a place for them and the boys to build a new life together. But for Debbie, it's not that simple. There's a lot of history in the old Grayson house, some of it being horrific moments for sure, but there's also a lot of beauty there. She's terrified of the change, and you can see the conflict in her eyes. Is moving on an act of healing, or is it just her running away? She tells him that she needs to think about it, which again, I see this inevitable confrontation between Debbie, Paul, and Nolan coming after what we saw in the end of episode 2, which is Nolan headed back to Earth. Now, from one family to the next, we see Titan is out with his own family, trying to enjoy some peace when his security is eliminated within seconds. We're talking heads and bodies being split in half with no time to warn Titan. The one doing this is a hitman named Magnetak. In the comics, he generates electromagnetic fields and is covered in titanium plates. He's durable, he's fast, and he's clearly sent here to send a message by Li Lu. Now, Titan manages to shield his own family just in time, but the fight is brutal. Magnetak uses every titanium plate in his arsenal to pin Titan down, but he makes one mistake, that being threatening Titan's family. Fueled by pure rage, Titan overpowers him. With a little assist from Isotope, Titan manages to beat Magnetak to death. Now, this victory doesn't come with all wins, as the message is loud and clear. Mr. Liu is out for blood, and he doesn't care who gets in the crosshairs. Now, back at the GDA headquarters, we get a fascinating conversation between Mark and Cecil. Cecil admits that in Mark's shoes, he would have made the same call regarding the recent kill. But Cecil is worried, and he shares that with Mark. He tells Mark that killing isn't in his DNA, despite him being the son of Nolan. He wants Mark to preserve somewhat of his purity as best as he can in his field of work. Cecil's logic is that he's the one that needs to make the dirty call so that the heroes don't have to live with the guilt. But Mark isn't a kid needing to be protected from making tough decisions on his own anymore, as he argues that maybe he needs to be the person who makes the tough choices if that means saving lives in the long run, especially those closest to him. He's tired of being a Boy Scout while the world burns around him. Now, while this is happening, we see Donald is trying to warn D.A. Sinclair to hide his work. Obviously, Mark being in the building, and the last thing anyone needs is Mark seeing the reanimant again and getting triggered by that trauma. Now, instead of listening, Sinclair takes this as an opportunity to make amends. He walks right into Cecil's office to apologize to Mark, but Mark immediately shuts him down. He tells Sinclair that he'll never want to listen to him and he never wants to see his face again. Now, we watch as Cecil tries to tiptoe around the fact why DA is still here and is basically saying that the Reanimen are a necessary evil because of their effectiveness. Again, Mark doesn't care. To him, the effectiveness doesn't erase the atrocities that DA Sinclair has committed. As Mark leaves, we see Cecil still hasn't told Mark that Conquest is back on the radar, which makes that a ticking time bomb just waiting to explode. Now, over with Eve, we see things are just falling apart quite literally. She finally breaks down and tells Mark that her powers have never been this bad before. But they are quickly reminded that the world doesn't pause just because they are struggling heroes, as Invincible Inc. hotline rings. But again, Mark and Eve mentally and physically are compromised. They aren't in shape to take a call. That brings in Oliver, who's more than eager to prove himself and offers to take the mission. We find out the call came from Titan, who finally has a lead on Mr. Liu's location. When Oliver shows up instead of Invincible, Titan is obviously skeptical. He wanted the heavy hitter, obviously, but Oliver, with that Viltrumite confidence, assures Titan that he is more than capable. As the saying goes, desperate times calls for desperate measures, as Titan doesn't have a choice but to trust the kid. Now, back at the Guardians headquarters, Eve and Rex are looking into why her powers aren't working. Now, he can't find anything physically wrong with her, but just as he begins to really look into his research, in comes an alert from an old Season 1 villain making their return for the fourth attempt to invade Earth, and it is the Flaxans. Now, they begin their invasion by taking humans as prisoners for the very first time, as the Guardians head to the front line and try to find a weakness in the Flaxans' defense, as Invincible arrives to help. Now, despite the Guardians not being in agreement with him, they do have to team up, as Britt, who's basically the Captain America type of leader in the situation, makes their plan pretty simple. Find their emitter, save all the civilians, and watch the Flaxans get old and die. We get the team being split up, where we see half the Guardians are hunting for the antenna, while the other half join Invincible in the trenches. Now, the Flaxans have upgraded. We were talking thousands of soldiers with tech that are more effective than we've ever seen before from them. Meanwhile, while that's happening, we see Oliver, like Invincible back in the day, goes along with whatever Titan has planned without fully knowing what he's getting into. Again, it's exactly what Mark did back in the day in Season 1, as Oliver being young and eager to prove himself as he flies Titan to the hideout that belongs to Liu. Now, they arrive at Liu's hideout, and within minutes, even though he's not full health, he unleashes the dragon. Oliver realizes immediately that he's out of his league. We see Oliver tries to hold his own, but he ends up calling Mark for backup. But as we know, Mark is literally fighting a war on the other side of the city. As we come to the end of this episode, we see Robot comes up with a plan that involves him and Monster Girl going to the Flaxan's open portal into their home planet. Now inside, they immediately find the antenna and Robot destroys it, and at the same time, they start freeing the humans. Back on Earth, we see the alien species dying out. But Robot sees the next wave is ready to go and tells the Guardians it is now or never, defeat them for good on their own turf or risk them coming back to being unbeatable. This decision is a callback to the conversation earlier with Rex and Monster Girl. Is risking taking out your enemies worth the cost? Against Cecil's direct orders, we see the Guardians decide to take the fight to them. But just as they charge the portal, a dying soldier gets one last shot off, destroying the portal's main gate, which means Robot and Amanda are stranded on this alien planet. This is a huge deal for anyone who knows where the story goes, and again, this is a reflection on a decision that Rex and Monster Girl made, which is trying to take out their enemies by any means necessary, but now they find themselves trapped on another planet. Now, Mark finishes up and gets his message about Oliver as he flies across the city, arriving just as the dragon is about to kill his little brother. This is the first time we see Mark and Oliver fighting together since they last fought Conquest together, and you can see their synergy is a lot better this time around. They end up driving the dragon back, and Lee manages to slip away. But then Mark sees Titan. He realizes Titan was the one who dragged his little brother into all of this. And as it's been building up this whole episode, we see Mark snaps. We see that Viltrumite rage bubbling over, and it's actually Oliver who has to jump in to stop Mark from going too far. We're watching Mark getting closer and closer to the edge where he might not be able to hold back any longer. Back home, we see Debbie patching up Oliver while Mark and Eve talk about losing Amanda and Rex, but we see Mark is optimistic that they'll find a way in finding them again. Now, our last scene shows a reunion with the Order as Titan rejoins after Invincible just tried to kill him, and for protection reasons, we see Liu rejoins as well. Now, we cut to this week's post-credit scene where we find Mark waking up from a nightmare and he's sweating. He goes to check on Eve, who's in the bathroom, and as the camera pans down to a pregnancy test, we see that it is positive and Eve is pregnant, which will change things for the both of them forever. I gotta say, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. It's right now tied between number 2 or 3 as far as the first 3 episodes we got this new season. Number 1 for me is episode 2, and I might lean towards episode 1 being my second favorite, or this one. Neither here nor there. Like I said, overall, I thought it was a solid episode of Invincible because we see Mark is becoming what he feared, or is he just doing what Omni-Man should have done or did do in protecting the Earth by any means necessary. I love the conflict that we see there. Again, the reveal of Eve being pregnant. Again, for those that know the comics, this will be a huge change for not only them, but their family and what they mean as heroes to this world. So that's going to be really exciting to explore. Meanwhile, we have Rex and Amanda on another planet. How are they going to get saved? And again, it's this theme of family and what you're willing to do to protect those that you love that is just really strong in these 3 episodes. And these 3 episodes were just a great chapter that's going to propel us into the second half of the season, which we all know is going to be filled with tons of blood. And again, we know the Viltrumites in this war is coming. With all that being said, that will conclude my breakdown of Invincible Season 4, Episode 3. I want to thank you all for watching or listening to this breakdown. If you all have watched all 3 of these breakdowns, I really appreciate the support. I've been covering this show since day 1. I love this show. And again, I think Season 3 is the best season of the show so far. But the way things are shaping up in this 4th season so far, it might be the best one yet. If you all are watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the hype button, also share the video, but share your thoughts on these first 3 episodes. Which one of the 3 were your favorite? What do you think about this episode, and what do you all hope to see in the weeks ahead? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and also consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Now, if you all are listening to this via podcast, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you all get your podcasts from, thank you all for listening. Let me know your thoughts on this episode, the first 3 episodes. What do you all hope to see? And also consider following the podcast and leaving me a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. Alrighty, y'all. Like I said, all 3 episodes are available on the channel now. I will be covering each episode of Invincible for the rest of the week. I might be doing reactions like I've done for the previous seasons, but we'll see about that. But in the meantime, thank you all for the support. I'll see you again for the next episode. In the meantime, don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.